Oh wow, hear that?
Yeah. Hi, it's Mylar Melodies at Gear4music Synth and Tech, and today I'm looking at the Moog Moogerfooger effects plugin bundle. You get all 7 pedals beautifully and authentically emulated, running in your DAW as many instances as your heart and mind can handle. Have I ever said that life is good? Because life is good in the world of music production. The Moogerfoogers are like cult items. They are amazingly interesting effects. It is amazing having all of them because you can chain them together in a way that is just wild and incredible and was very much a luxury that a few had. We can have as many as we can handle, and they run very well on my Mac M1. But there was this amazing thing about the Moogerfoogers, which was the fact that they were really modular synth panels that were being sold to guitarists as effects, which is quite wild. So much so that they had CV connectivity around the back. So you could interconnect Moogerfoogers and make this kind of mad relationship where they would talk to each other, they would push each other around and make for wild effects. You might then therefore say, well, these can't do that, can they? Because they're plugins. But you'd be wrong, because when you look at the back of them, they have CV connectivity exactly like the real pedals. And if I right click, I can see the outputs of the other pedals in my session. They can talk to each other. And obviously you can automate every parameter to your heart's content. And I'm using Bitwig here, so we can really like go to town and LFO things. And best of all, you can just call up multiple instances. And when you combine Moogerfoogers together, big things start to happen. So what I've got here is a session with a few little ideas, and I've been playing with the Moogerfoogers and chaining them together. Here in this little drum example, I've got the analog delay, the MO104S, and the cluster flux, say it right, cluster flux, which I remember being introduced as a physical item. We all had a good laugh about that name, and it's back now for us to smirk again. Did you hear that? Let me just turn those off. That's the dry signal. That's with the MF104S. And you can see that with the 104, it's an analog delay. It's very dark and kind of vibey. But if you go to the little control up in the corner here, we can change the tone. We can make it a ping pong, something never possible on the original because all these ones can be in stereo, and we can make it brighter. So I'd actually already done that. I'd made it analog, which is something in between. Legacy is very dark. And you can change the timing, a few of the little things. Oof. So what you're hearing is that kind of swish, swish, swish thing. And that's, can you see the amount dial is being swept, and it's being swept by an LFO that I have set up in Bitwig. Of course, we know that we can CV interconnect our Moogerfoogers, so you can actually make that happen with another pedal. I mean, you can make it happen right in the pedal as well because it's got an LFO built in. But what I'm doing here is I'm controlling the amount that it is happening by. So proponents of the Moogerfooger will always remember the fact that Moogerfoogers always had an effect. There was always something that they did, but there was also on every Moogerfooger there was a drive control, and that just made each one into a distortion pedal. The same is true here. And note that there's a little icon here, this little chain, which changes the output. I started pointing at the screen, but you can't see that. It changes the output so that you are gain compensated. So you can drive it without adjusting the output level. I'll actually turn that off because I do want a bit more output level here. So every one of them drives and contributes drive as you go. We have a few different controls on the delay, which is short and long mode. It's really crunchy as well. You can see, by the way, LFO sync, so we can sync it to the tempo, and then the rate controls become like dividers so that everything's nicely synced. It's a really lovely, warm analog delay, but you've got an LFO to mess things up, and you hear that we can automate the amount that it is being controlled by. Next up, the cluster flux. So if I... That's off. On. Cluster flux is a chorus and a flanger. I have it in chorus mode here, and it's really good for just adding like gorgeous spatializations with just a little bit of application. But then, like all of these pedals, it's really fun to go nuts and push it. So you hear it's wider. If I turn it off, on, and then the feedback. And you can see we have an LFO to control the time. Woohoo! Flanger. So crackers. There's a lot of like really subtle, lovely kind of animations that are possible. And then with all of these, when you push them, they just sound really cool and interesting. So cluster flux and analog delay. Love it. Love it. So let me get another element going and I'll show you the fuzzer. So this is the 103S, which is the phaser. And if I solo this, very pronounced effect, turn it off. Oh, that wonderful effect is gone. I have a sneaking suspicion, because this reminds me, if you're familiar with the record, it reminds me a lot of a certain Daft Punk record and a certain kind of sound that they had, and it's very possible that they used the 103. Ooh. So you hear the LFO is really moving it around and just works so well with the pattern that is being played by the bass guitar. Should we have a little bit of delay? 104. That was a real test. Do you know the numbers? Yes, I do. Oh wow, hear that? Wow. There you go. It's like almost so subtle that you do hear it, but you don't. But when it's gone, you miss it. So, delightful. 2 Moogerfoogers being used for this effect. Like, if this was the hardware realm, you'd have to print it and you'd have to own both. And it wouldn't be in stereo, as it is. Life is good. Next, the strange dark horse of the Moogerfooger family. It is possibly the coolest one of all, the MIDI MuRF. You hear that? So, the MIDI MuRF is always the weird one because it's hard to explain, but I will try. It is a filter bank, like a graphic EQ, where you have a bunch of different bands. Just like a graphic EQ, you can control the bands and exclude certain frequencies. But what you're hearing with the MuRF is the fact that it animates the audibility of the bands, and it uses a little envelope to do it with. And we can control the shape of the envelope here, and we can control the animation with the pattern dial. Now, as a bit of a flex, I've got the Arturia MiniFreak to the side of me, which is the new synthesizer Arturia just announced. It's really dead good. That's a chord that's being played live. That's the filter. So I'll open it up. So what I've got is just a bright sound ready to be filtered. And I've got the MIDI MuRF here. So you can see how I exclude bands like this. And it really picks out certain resonances, which depend on the mode. There's a bass and a mids, and that's because it shifts the bands so that they better serve the bass register or mid-frequency stuff. So if you're playing like bass guitar, because there was a bass MuRF, or mids, it changes what happens. There is also an LFO, and if you put the LFO on, it moves the bands around. Nice. So it starts to like animate sound with little filtered bands. But then there's this pattern thing. So if I turn it from pattern 1 to 2, it's so lovely. So what it's doing is it's playing the bands sort of sequentially, and it's using the envelope to choose how it fades them in. And the envelope dial is like choppy on one end and choppy on the other end. But what it's doing is it's actually changing a sort of like a shape, a curve, from triangle in the middle to like a downward saw on the left, and then a ramp up on the right, smoothly, like the modulation LFO on the MS-20, if you know that one. And then if we choose different patterns, it moves through the bands in different ways. Delightful. It's such a lovely stereo spatialized effect. So why don't we add our friend 108? Look at that. The cluster flux. And let's have a little bit of cluster flux on it. On chorus. That's nice. Just makes it like a little bit more triumphant. Oh, a bit more feedback. Let's modulate the delay time with the LFO on the MuRF. So we go time here, we right click, and so, by the way, it's HYYB is the serial number. And that's actually off the screen at the bottom, but take my word for it. There you go. So now the rate of the delay is being controlled by the rate of the MuRF. It's happening way too much. You can see the little line as it moves it. If I turn this dial down, now it just moves it a tiny smidge. And I can do it in reverse as well. That sounds quite good. And if I close this up, we get back to seeing the whole GUI, you know, properly. And actually what's really nice, do you see how it shows you the little like CD light here? Really nice. That is so nice. So if we want to automate that in our DAW, which obviously we can, we're in our world here. This shows how well I know this program. I click my little key icon down here, and I go here, and I go classic LFO, thank you very much, and I want to control the envelope. Just like that. So this is a Bitwig thing. I'm using an LFO which Bitwig can create, but of course if you're using Ableton Live, for example, there are ways you can do it with Max for Live. You can create extra LFOs, but you can see that we're moving the envelope control. I'm using this LFO to do it with. So good. How cool is that? And then the 101. What's lovely about the filter is it has an envelope follower built in. What the envelope follower does is it follows the volume of the sound and then moves the filter using it. We have different poles. We also can put it into stereo. Bonkers. So I hope you're starting to see how you can start somewhere and you can end up in a completely different place, and they work so well together. Like there's a reason why this is sold as like a bundle where you get all 7. I was about to say 4. You get all 7 because they really, 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 really are wonderful together. That's what it's all about. So next, one of the slightly odder ones that we've not used so far is the FreqBox. And I've got another example here with a bunch of different things all working together. And I'm going to disengage them so we start from a semi-sensible standpoint. It's an 808 plus the Flux. Oof. So what's happening here is we've got a really fast rate. You hear that? And that fast rate is just making the processor, like the rate, just go nuts. And so it creates this quivering effect. Ooh. That's the MIDI MuRF. And there's a quite sort of broad envelope. And lots of drive. It's sort of like creating this little like call and response out of the kick. Very peculiar. Turn up the bass, why not? But then the FreqBox. So this one's very weird. And what the FreqBox is a oscillator that tracks the pitch of the input and then animates itself. And it sounds like on. So it's like creating a gritty little tone that's being blended in, and that tone like tracks what we're listening to. Like it tracks the pitch information. And of course, we're playing a drum beat in, which is quite an unpitched thing traditionally. But because there is a tone to an 808 kick, like I should know what it is. It's like 50 hertz or thereabouts. So it's tracking 50 hertz, and then it's also reacting to the like volume level changes. And of course, there are other things like there's a stereo mode that's built in, and we can also control how the envelope responds. So is it just frequency or is it frequency and level? In this instance, it's used to kind of gritify and make like a sort of tone out of a drum beat. But I think, you know, if you plugged in guitar and other kind of pitched information, then you can almost use it to make your synthesizer sing. And because you've got the 101 filter, you could then place that after the 107 and you can build like a synthesized voice. And because it's the computer and you can just have loads of instances, I don't see what stops you having multiple instances of the 107S and like splitting them and basically making chords out of them and then filtering that. Such possibilities when you have as many of a pedal as you want, and then money is no longer an object. How delightful. But there's one more, which is the RingMod. And that is a very unusual effect. It's like the RingMod takes an oscillator and multiplies your input signal with it to derive a new signal and makes this kind of somewhat clangorous, inharmonic, sort of strange bell-like version of your sound at high settings. And then at low settings, it's almost like a tremolo, which can, I mean, it's absolutely a tremolo. Turning it on our beat. And then let's get the filter, because that's quite bright and strange. That sounds pretty neat. So then we've got this envelope follower that's happening in the 101, and I want to apply it to my 102. Of course, we know that we can do such a crazy thing, possibly to frequency. So I'm going to find my 101S. It's down here. UHVB, almost UVB 76, which would be appropriate for the strangeness that we're about to concoct. Then let's add the MIDI MuRF. It's just called a MuRF. The MIDI MuRF is the pedal. Weird. And then let's add the 104 delay. And let's increase the time. sync it. So, what I hope that this little cul-de-sac illustrates is that a very simple 808 beat with a bit of futzing, because I just cut a little bit of time out, just like 2 or 3 minutes while I just like tinkered and just fine-tuned all of the various things. But look at what's happening. I've got 4 Moogerfoogers all doing wonderful, sensational things, all in my DAW. I mean, like, this is cool. Like, this is really cool. It's really good. And I really like that these work so well together. I don't know how to put this, except to say that it makes sense that this is a bundle. This is a thing you buy and you get all of these because you absolutely use them in with each other. You obviously can use them individually, but goodness me, like the possibilities when you chain them up are chef's kiss. So my compliments to Moog, who made these, because this is a Moog product. This is not like a third-party thing. Like, they've made these in-house. So not just analog things, digital analog things too. So thank you for joining me on this wonderful journey to explore the glorious world that we live in now, where this is possible. Please check out the Moog Moogerfooger bundle at Gear4music. A link below to purchase the Moog Moogerfooger bundle so that you too can have this much fun in your DAW. Yes, link below. Please check it out. You get prices and so forth. Leave a comment, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye.